the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roots of the Science podcast with your girl Anne with an E. Today is episode 63 of the podcast, and as a usual reminder, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new, welcome. Please make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite listening platforms, either your Apple, your Spotify, your Google, or just set a daily reminder that Mondays we have a new podcast. Now, today, my guest is Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana, also known as Sine, who was born and bred in South Africa. She's a PhD student in astrophysics and has recently submitted. How exciting. And yes, we have another astrophysicist this week. What? So exciting. So in this episode, we learned that she grew up in the village in the South Coast in South Africa. Maths and physics were her favorite subjects growing up. In her matric year, which is also known as 12th grade, she went to a career fair hosted by the University of KwaZulu Natal, where she learned that careers in astrophysics were actually possible. When she first enrolled at UKZN, University of KwaZulu Natal, there was no direct majors to do astrophysics, although now it has since changed. Instead, she did a double major of applied mathematics and physics. At the time of this recording, Sine had just submitted her PhD thesis 2 weeks prior. So she was, after getting some well-deserved rest and sleep, she's now anxiously waiting for her results so that she can officially be called Dr. Sikhosana. She tells us about her exciting research was all about. And in this research was to understand the physical processes that occur in large structures in the universe. So groups of galaxies bound together by gravity. She tells us more about this work and its importance, as well as the practical aspects of being an astrophysicist, which is pretty important because I think we all have this idea, and she clears that up so nicely. We then talk about some opportunities that being in this field of STEM has afforded her, and she highlights that one of them was the first time that she was able to go on a plane, and since then she's had the privilege to travel to many parts of the world. It's important to mention that Sine finished her PhD during the worldwide pandemic, and she tells us more about how she did this and some of the struggles and challenges that she had to face to overcome. So stay tuned to listen to all of this and so much more. Let's go. Hi Sine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure.
It's definite pleasure having you. And, just to get the ball rolling, can you please just give us a brief introduction? So who is Sine? Where's she from? Where are you based? And just quickly, what are you currently doing?
Okay, so Sinenhlanhla Sikhosana is a village girl. I was born in a town at south coast of KwaZulu Natal, South Africa, and I grew up in a village called Ekambu, which is also located in the south coast of KwaZulu Natal. I'm currently, I guess in an awkward period, I just submitted my PhD.
Congratulations.
So I'm not sure thank you. Not sure if I'm still a student, but it's too early to call me doctor. So yeah, I just recently submitted my PhD, which is applied mathematics, but my research focus is actually in astrophysics.
Ooh, interesting. So we've got like double major sort of, but we're going to get into that a bit later. So before we talk about you and everything, a little birdie or some digging, or you told me rather, that away from the science and reading academic journals and, conference papers, you actually read other things, like in particular African literature, So from somebody who hasn't had the pleasure of reading
African literature, as an avid reader yourself, some of your favorites, or what are some of your favorite books, if you can even give, because I know sometimes it's hard. It's like picking your favorite child. So if you have a favorite, what would it be?
I know, right? I know. Yeah, I was like selecting my top, at least top three. So my top three has to be Ubabu Zex Mda, and then of course Chimamanda Ngozi, and also Kopano Matla. Those are my three favorite authors. But like my most favorite book, I guess, has to be from Uyaya Gyasi, which is Homegoing. So I guess, yeah, although she's not part of the top three, that book is definitely a favorite.
Is it a nonfiction, a fiction book?
It's fiction. So like the kind of fiction I like, I know like, I guess I read a lot of fiction, but it's like the kind of fiction I like. So for example, with Chimamanda and Kopano Matla, so they like speak about current situations that are actually affecting society, but like create fictional characters and storylines. So it actually is related to things that are going on, but like there's like fictional characters and storylines as well. So yeah.
No, I hear you. That's really interesting, and I'm so glad that academia hasn't ruined your love for reading. I know with some people it's like, oh my word, I read so much academic journals. It's hard for me to love the reading for relaxation purposes. So it's really great that your love has still stayed. And I like how you note that you read fiction books. Is it on purpose to get away from all of the factual content that you consume?
I guess so. Like I have really tried. I've read like a few biographies, but like when I'm reading aside from like my work, like I like things that will just take me to imaginary scenarios, like just away from, I guess, the realities and the factual information, which is in like journals and papers. So I guess that's where it comes from.
Yeah. No, I understand. And that's great. So just back to you in your introduction, you quickly mentioned that you called yourself a village girl, right? So in terms of the whole backstory, I'm just curious, how does this village girl end up doing getting into STEM, number one, and more specifically in something such as applied mathematics and something out of this world, literally, astrophysics?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's quite an interesting career path. But I guess just to take you back, like where I grew up, it's like literally, it was a farm, previously like a farm with very few houses or like families that stayed there. And so like what I loved the most was like just how you could explore nature, like to the point where I would accompany my brothers when they were herding cattle, and like just the exploration of it all and the discoveries that will make like made me really fascinated. And so I was always curious and wanted to know more. And so when I went to, I guess high school is where it was cemented, like maths and physics were my definite like favorite subjects, because like they required you to think, like there were the discoveries of like the chemical bonds and whatnot. So it was, my favorite subjects. I actually didn't know, like up until my matric level, I didn't know that like I could study astrophysics in KZN or South Africa actually. But I attended a career exhibition in my matric year, which was hosted by UKZN. And that's where I got to learn about this field where people get to explore space. And I was just and to actually know that it encompassed like both math and physics, I was like, okay, yeah, I was like, I have found my soul, well, not soulmate, sole career, whatever. Yeah.
It's interesting, and I love that being exposed to these things. It goes back to that whole topic of the fact that people are unaware that these opportunities are out there, and the fact that in your high school career, the university came, or rather you went, and you were able to see like, oh my gosh, this dream of mine, I didn't even know it was probably like attainable, but it actually is. And you can, like you said, you can actually do it in South Africa. So I think that must have been so comforting and just fueled that fire. So then talk us through that process. You see, okay, this opportunity is possible. What then? What happens?
Yeah, so like definitely just to touch on what you said, the importance of exposure. So like I realized through the whole process that like one can truly never become what they do not see. And so like because in my community I had never come across an astrophysicist, and so like I didn't think that you could study it in South Africa. And so that is why I make it a point that even during my postgrad studies, like I go out to places where they do not have access to such information and just let them know about career opportunities that are available out there. But as for my own personal journey, so found out like through the career week, which was hosted at UKZN. And so there was a postgrad student who presented about his research and basically his career path to becoming an astrophysicist. But at the time that I registered at UKZN, they didn't have like a specific major in astronomy. And so in my undergrad, I actually studied a double major in applied mathematics and pure physics. And so that's why my PhD is still in applied mathematics, although the research focuses in astrophysics. However, now they actually have a BSc major in astronomy. So you can double major in astronomy and physics, or astronomy and maths. And so that is basically my journey. And so from honors up until PhD, I've been focusing in astrophysics and cosmology.
That's great. That's great. So I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but to your knowledge, the reason why the BSc was not available in the beginning, was it because they didn't have the equipment, the things that are needed at undergrad level? And then is it that now these things are available and then the course is actually you can actually do it straight away instead of going the roundabout route like you did?
Yes. So I guess in the years that I studied, it was quite a while ago, I think 2011, like the major university that actually offered astronomy was UCT. And so they actually already had a dedicated course in astronomy. But like here, I mean, at UKZN, there was a very small community of researchers who actually did research in this field. And so there was no capacity to actually have a BSc major of astronomy and so on. But like because South Africa won the bid to host the Square Kilometer Array project, and so that's when like the astronomy industry in South Africa overall started booming. So it was around that time where I actually started. And so because there was so much interest and need to expand the community, that's when UKZN was also able to increase capacity and hire more staff in this field, and hence have like a BSc major in astronomy.
It goes to show the importance of investment in research and development, because it then creates these opportunities where instead of having one place, you can have multiple places in Africa, and the growth of this field in South Africa as a whole. And I think if I'm not mistaken, South Africa is leading in that field, right? In the field of astrophysics and astronomy.
Yeah, definitely. Like it is leading. I mean, we've had like the optical astronomy for quite some time, like over, I think, 100 years. They were just launching the South African optical astronomy community, but like with radio astronomy particularly, it was when they hosted, South Africa won the bid. So the beautiful thing about that is that although South Africa is the host country, there are also neighboring countries that they've began to partner with, and actually also host students from those countries as well. And so it's really amazing how, although it started in South Africa and South Africa is leading, many other African countries are also coming on board and also working with South Africa in the astronomy field.
This is so great. I love how it starts in one place and then it gets to feed off into all these other African countries, and more and more young up and coming students who aspire to do this can actually now be able to dream, because obviously then it will be more available for them as an option in their own countries, which is absolutely fantastic. And kudos to them. Like I really get excited, because for me, I didn't even know like this was a thing. It was like in the thing like in like America where you see like white scientists who are doing all of this stuff. So here you are, I'm talking to a Black female. It just gives me goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps. Okay, so now you've given us this nice overview about everything that you do, and you said that you're in that weird phase of submitting. You've just submitted, and it's probably that phase where I'm sure are you in that relieved or in that panic mode now where you're relieved and you've had your break and now you want to know your results?
I think I'm transitioning to that stage because it's been just over 2 weeks since I submitted. And so for the past 2 weeks, I was like sleeping, reclaiming my sleep. And so I was a bit like on the relaxed and like just grateful that I finally submitted. But now I'm just like, okay, I just want this done. Can we get my results? And just, from there. So
no, I understand. Just now we'll be calling you Dr. Ne, which is absolutely fantastic. So in order to us to understand how the title, which is loading, basically, it's there. It's just technicalities now. I'm just going to read what your PhD was about, where your research was to understand the physical processes that occur in large structures of the universe. So groups of galaxies bound together by gravity. So I know that's like touching the tip of the iceberg. So can you just briefly tell us more about this research and why is it so important?
Okay, definitely. So basically, as I mentioned, so we know that our own galaxy that we live in is called the Milky Way. Now, galaxies, like human, don't like isolated, lonely environments. And so they basically exist in families of like hundreds to thousands groups of galaxies, which are bound by gravity. And so these objects like are very massive. And so they can go up to like a quadrillion times the mass of the sun. So quadrillion being like 15 zeros. So they're really massive. They're really massive. And so when two of these objects collide, like very interesting astrophysical processes take place. So like from the way the energy is transferred to what happens to the particles within that environment. And so for my project, I was interested in studying what happens when two of these clusters collide. And so the energy given off from this collision is injected into electrons. And so now these electrons have like a lot of energy and they move to like large scales. And so I just wanted to map like the transportation of these electrons as they are transported, they are guided by magnetic fields. And so basically the pattern of this transportation and basically the environment that this transportation takes place in. And so by mapping this for like a group, a sample of galaxy classes, so just not one scenario, different scenarios, we are actually able to map out like what the history of the evolution of these patterns. And so if we're able to do that, we are actually able to connect this to how the large scale structure, so how these group of galaxies evolve throughout the universe. So from way back when they started forming to how we currently view them now. So that's basically the importance, to be able to map out the structures throughout the cosmic evolution.
Quite interesting. So recently I also had somebody who's an astrophysicist on the show.
That's amazing.
Right? I'm so excited.
We're taking over.
Yeah. So now in our discussion about when people think about astrophysics, they think you guys look at the stars all the time. So I want to find out, in terms of the practicalness of your PhD, practically, how was it done, if you can say that? Because I also find out that sometimes for him, he said that most of his stuff had to do with coding and processing information, and it's not just staring into the night sky. So into space, rather. So I wanted to find out, in terms of, for you, the practicality of it, how, without getting too technical, of course, but how are you able to do this with these very big galaxies?
Okay, I'll take you through it. So, yeah, similar to your guest, I don't actually stay into space at all. So basically, from at the beginning of the project, we write a proposal to a telescope. So in South Africa, we have a radio telescope called Meerkat. And so this is one of the instruments I use, but there's also an instrument which is based in India, which is called the GMRT. So this is a telescope that operates at radio wavelengths. And so we write a proposal saying that we have like this really cool project that we think of. Would you please give us time so that we can observe this object using your instrument? And so if we are successful, they give us an X amount of time, and then they use this instrument to look at the object we are interested in. They then take the data, it's compressed, and then they store it in a sort of a website. And so I'm able to download this data, which is like in a compressed form. And then using my laptop, I then process it, and then I create images. So when it comes, it's like just random variables, like stored into a computer. And so I take this data set and then convert it into a scientific image. And then from this image, I'm then able to draw out the science that I am interested in. So the processing procedure is where I do a lot of coding. Like when I first found out, I was like, okay, this is not what I signed up for.
I can imagine.
But it's actually amazing because you get to gain so many skills. And so I use a lot of software programs, and then I write code as well to then process this raw data and make it into a scientific image in which I can use for my analysis and actually produce results.
Wow, that's amazing. It just blows my mind, because I think most of us, we just see, like you said, those scientific images, and we're like, oh, amazing. They're just looking at the stars. So it's pretty neat that now you explain that you just get all of these numbers, and then you using all of this statistics and technology, you get to build all of these wonderful pictures. So is this something that you tell, let's say, if a girl or a young person comes to you, like you said, that you go and do these outreach programs, right? Do you tell them straight away, like, hey, this actually involves more coding than actually what you think? Because I think we all have that assumption, like disclaimer alert.
Well, I guess it depends on the kind of outreach event. So, for example, if I'm going to like grade 9 students who like the aim is just to like get them interested in astronomy and like fascinated by what's out there, then for that I'll definitely like show the cool pictures of the stars and whatnot to get them interested in the sciences. But then we also have, like, for example, at UKZN, we host like a career week, or we have like a day where we invite students that are interested to actually shadow a scientist and see what they do. And so in those kind of events, then I let them in on what we actually do, like our daily lives, so the coding part and all of that. So I guess it depends on the type of event that I'm speaking in.
That's very important. It's true. I mean, even if you do say it to, let's say, a younger audience, and you tell them about coding and you get into the technicalities, it might not even mean as much to them, you know, even more so than saying that it will scare them away. But it just, I think sometimes the level of comprehension, and it's pretty smart that your team does that. And I think it's very, very, very important that it's done in that manner. So yeah, no, thank you. I'm learning a lot. Like where were you when I was in high school or in high school for me to find out more about this?
Yeah, no, fortunately now the next generation will have this privilege of having people they can actually relate to. Because like even for me as well, like even on this part, like, okay, I'm an African female in this field. It was like very hard to find my feet, because like it took time to find people that I can relate with, like on a personal level, like away from the academia. So I think it's beautiful that like our future generations will have people who be like, oh, this person can actually fetch water from a river and still explore the sky. Like, how amazing is that? Like, I can relate with this person at that level and still aspire to be. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And like you said, the beauty of science, and this is why I love our generation of scientists. I think because we know what we didn't have, we'll be able to provide that support. And the more that I speak to scientists, you know, across either from this podcast or just in general, you realize that that's the key thing which keeps on coming up. Like, hey, I wish I had a me or so and so who looked like me. And it's really great that now that's happening.
It's amazing.
So yeah. And speaking about the beauty of science and STEM, being in this field also has afforded you some wonderful opportunities. You know, like you said, that you are this village girl looking, apart from like staring at the stars, I mean, and working with these amazing telescopes, etc. Would you like to share on some other opportunities that have come from being in this field?
I will definitely share. I have a lot. I'll try to just compress. So first of all, like even being able to pursue my studies to this level, it was because I was able to actually be awarded a scholarship. So the first thing is like, having a scholarship, first of all, afforded me the opportunity to choose this career, because my family and teachers have had a very different career path in mind. But like knowing that they didn't have to sort of financially now support me in a field where they were like, so where are you going to work afterwards? So I guess that's the number one privilege of being able to be in this career path. And then I guess the highlight for me has to be my first time flying. So like I was able to fly, I think it was to Johannesburg, and it was basically because I was on this program. So we have the Astrophysics Research Center at UKZN. And so when I had started, they had like this lady who handled public relations. And so basically I was working with her to do like a lot of outreach. And so because of that, I was able to actually get on a plane and fly. So like that was like one of the highlights.
Wow.
And I guess it just didn't end up locally, but I've been also I had the pleasure to like travel to so many other countries as well. So I guess, yeah, traveling has to be a definite highlight, like to places I would have never thought of, like, or like would have never been even be able to reach, basically being myself, but because of the travel grants and the opportunities that came up, then I was able to actually travel to such places. So it's really amazing to know that like being in this path and having like all these opportunities being awarded. And I guess the best part as well is the people you meet along the journey. And so whenever I travel and the cultural experiences I had as well. Like I now have a friend who's from Vietnam, which is like a different culture from what I know, but like because of being part of this journey, I was actually able to have those experiences.
That's the beauty of science, is that it really allows you to travel, to get funding opportunities. It's really a privilege. It really, really is, especially being in South Africa where, for example, many people do not have that privilege for education or to travel, or like you said, going on a plane. To somebody else, it might seem like an everyday thing, but to others, that's something that's never happened. And I think it's always really good to showcase that, hey, I mean, although your research can show you flames, and it does, but it has its good moments. It has its really good moments.
That is so true.
Yeah. And speaking of flames, that the PhD has shown you, you had to do a PhD. Well, you had to finish your PhD in a pandemic. You know, the world was burning, literally. You know, so many people lost a lot, be it financially or just be it loved ones. You know, this year was something that nobody could have planned. So kudos, actually, I don't even know, times a million for finishing and completing and for getting to the end. You know, some of us who are just starting are like, oh my God, I wish I was there. So
all the best, you get there.
Yeah, no, true. Thank you. So if you don't mind, what are some of the challenges that you faced and that you managed to overcome to get you to this finish line?
Yeah, so it was definitely a challenging period. It was. So I'll just mention a few challenges. So the first for me was like the change of environment. So basically at home, I stay at home where I share the house with many other people, like including 3 little gorgeous, cute, but like sometimes chaotic nieces and nephews. And so like I had to work my way around that environment and actually be able to focus on my work with so many people, like sharing my office space with so many people. And I guess the second challenge, like related to the work as well, was most of my work, as I mentioned, is on my laptop. So I need like constant internet connection because I don't just process the data on my laptop. I connect to like a supercomputer, which is based on campus. And so I need that constant internet connection. And so like data is expensive. And so even though the university provided, like the data they provided only lasts like less than a week, it's done. So I couldn't, I know, right? I couldn't go. So I had to manage finances in such a way. And then I guess the third has to do like with basically having the mental strength to focus on my research while there's so much going on. So just to share, like my mother has like a chronic illness, which scientists actually reported that like if she were to contract COVID, like the illness could turn out to be severe. And so like whenever like she had fever, I would just panic and have so much anxiety. But like above all that, I still had to draw strength and like focus on my work and produce results. So it was quite challenging.
Wow. First of all, I can't even begin to imagine how stressful that must be for you, especially in the case of your mom. And I hope and pray that she continues to be healthy, and that the COVID does not impact her in any way. And also with everything that you said, it's a lot. Daughter issues, living at home. I think that's that shift that some people are able to work from home and it works, but other people, there's so many things that are hindering them. So it's really a big task for you that you actually did it. And again, my biggest congratulations. And I think this also just goes to show that, you are not a victim of your circumstance. Whatever is happening, I'm not saying, I'm not going to be like all motivational and be like, you can do it. I mean, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really, really hard. But I think once you bite the bullet and you persevere and you cry through it and you sweat, I'm a firm believer of tears.
Yeah, eventually you get things done, like through the tears. But I guess just to also add to it was like, to me, what I just found mind-boggling was how the universities, so like the academic calendar for the undergrads was actually slightly extended. But like for postgrad, it was like, you guys are immune to all of this. The deadlines remain the same. I was just like, okay, like, are we not supposed to get affected by anything going on around? But as you said, like persevering through it all, then one can get it done.
Definitely, yeah. The sometimes the institution, it gets a bit tricky how they handle things. And I think there's a lot of people who complained, because I'm also at that institution as well. So I can only imagine how hard it must be, especially for the people who are in the final stages. I know so many people who were affected and had to add a semester or, and without funding for that semester. It was a lot. It was a lot. So, but I'm glad that for you managed, and soon we'll be calling you a doctor. Yeah. Has a nice ring to it. Eh?
Music to my ears. I know, right?
It has a nice ring to it. No, Sneh, thank you so much for this chat. I had such a great time. You taught us a lot. You inspired us. It was really, really a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me. You're such a great host. I really enjoyed myself throughout the conversation. Felt like you're like my long lost friend throughout the conversation. So thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to hear that. And that's such an awesome compliment. Thank you. And to everybody else who listened and who's listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. Until next time, goodbye.